Tim 2. And then Tim 3.
All right, so we've talked about doing a pump down where we pump all the refrigerant to the outdoor unit. So if after we do a pump down, before we work on this, we still have to get that last bit of refrigerant out of the system, right? Yep. We still have to recover it. Now, if it's microchannel, do you guys see the microchannel? Yeah. You see how important it is to look at the coil to see what it is first before you jump into conclusions? Yeah, very important, right? So if it's microchannel or if the filter jar is behind the valves, we want to make sure that we do an entire recovery. The only difference between recovering from a pump down system and pumping from a whole system is going to take much longer recovering from the whole entire system, especially with the compressor, because all the oil, the refrigerant's mixed with the oil, and as you pull the refrigerant out of the oil, it's boiling from a liquid to vapor and absorbing heat, and the temperature drops, means the pressure drops, means it takes that much longer to pull out. So there's several steps involved with recovery. First one we're going to do today is going to be the simplest of the processes. Okay? So we have our manifold gauge set hooked up, and now we're going to have that yellow hose, yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that yellow hose is going to go someplace. It's going to go to our recovery machine. It's a machine that recovers, yes.
This is on the EPA test, guys. I'm going to ask, what's the yellow hose for?
Yeah, I know. I'm not surprised.
For the recovery.
The really sad part is it's a question that needs to be asked.
So let's quickly define recovery. What is recovery? Take the refrigerant out of the unit in any state or any condition and put it into a recovery tank. So as HVAC technicians, what we do is we recover refrigerants. We take the refrigerant out of the unit in any condition and put it into a recovery tank. That's what we do. Now, there's two other types of recovery. Well, there's only one recovery. There's two other things related to it. One of those is called recycle, where you take the refrigerant and you recycle it, you filter it, you clean the oils, and you put it back in the system. We really don't do recycling. We'll get into that when we get to the EPA class. And then the third one is reclaim refrigerant. So once I put the refrigerant in any condition, I'm going to take this back to the supply house, and they're going to send it back to a chemical company. And that chemical company is going to take these refrigerant out, and they're going to filter it, and they're going to clean it, and they're going to put it back to a brand new condition. It's going to be within a very small spec, and that's called reclaim. Reclaim is only done in a factory someplace far, far away, right? Far, far, far away. That's right. I was thinking that too. So that's all we're going to be doing is recovery. Take it out of any condition, put it into a tank. It's separate from recycle and reclaim. It's the 3 R's for the EPA: recycle, recover, and reclaim. For some reason, so many people out there say, "Oh yeah, let's reclaim this refrigerant." I'm like, what? We're going to build a factory and all this test equipment and put it back to factory specific? No, we're going to recover it. We're going to take it out of the any condition, put it into a tank. And for most of that, we're going to need a recovery machine. Whoa. Right? Recovery machine has 2 dials, right? 2 gauges in it, and it's got 2 ports, and those 2 ports are going to be in and out. And all this is a pump. Inside of here, you're going to have a pump, and you're also going to have a little condensing coil because it's built to take it from low pressure to high pressure, so we need a way to get rid of some of that heat. That's all it is a pump. So it's going to suck in low pressure vapor and pump out higher pressure vapor, right? It's going to be it's a pump. That's all it is. It's pulling in and pumping out. So it's going to have an in. Where do you think we hooked that yellow hose to? To the end. Yes! Fantastic! Sometimes students struggle with this, so I'm really glad you guys got it. So that middle hose, we're going to hook it to the in port.
Whoa!
It's incredible, huh? Imagine that. Other Imagine Dragons, but we can't imagine that. Yes!
I was waiting for it.
So there's a guy that I know that he does air conditioning work, and he actually got to work at one of the Imagine Dragons house here in Las Vegas. He got to see the gold record or whatever it is in the wall and stuff. He's not allowed to talk about it. He told me. I won't tell you his name or who he works for or anything, but it was pretty cool to
signed an NDA before he left.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff you got to do with that. But he wouldn't tell me where he was or anything like that. But I didn't need to know anyways, but it's pretty cool. Some of the stuff you get to do at HVAC, you work in famous people's houses, get to meet famous
Going to
people.
the right hand of Stephen Jobs on Friday, the software developer for Apple.
They didn't bury it? Like it was.
Yeah, you're gonna be working.
That's
with
gross.
Steve Jobs,
No,
totally.
he's past his right hand when he used to work for Apple.
Well,
Software developer for Apple.
that's kind of creepy.
Cut off his right hand.
That's gross.
His right hand.
Oh, his right hand man. Oh, that's completely different then.
Yeah.
You know, that guy's pretty cool. Like he was the brainchild behind a lot of that.
No working with corpses.
Of course not.
I'm not certified for that yet.
All right, so we're gonna have the tube coming in here into the recovery machine. So in the recovery machine, there's one that says OUT and one that says IN. Where are we gonna hook that yellow hose? The one that says in, right? Now, usually what you're gonna have in addition to is you're gonna have a little filter dryer. So this way we can make sure that we protect our machine, right? We can protect it from whatever's gonna be in there. So we have, usually on the inside, we're going to have one of these little miniature filter dryers. So what we do is we're filtering the refrigerant as it comes in, and then this does something special. It pumps it out to our recovery tank. So the recovery tank's going to have two words on it. It's going to have the word liquid, which case it goes to a straw at the bottom, and it's going to have vapor. We want to hook it to, for right now, the simplest way, the one that says vapor side, right? Hook the hose to the vapor side. That way, as I'm pumping refrigerant in, the refrigerant liquid will drip down to the bottom, and it'll be there. So it's easier to get it in the tank, where if you put it into the liquid side, you're having to push it down and then push all that liquid back up. It's just a little easier this way. So we want to hook it to the vapor port. But what's in this hose and what's in this hose?
Wait, what?
What is in this hose and what is in this hose?
Liquid.
And the end.
Did I ever turn anything on or open any valves?
Well, yeah.
No. There's dirty, nasty, polluted, contaminated, disgusting air. Do I want to pull clean refrigerant but first pull it through this disgusting, nasty, polluted, horrible air and then pump it through this tube of dirty, nasty, polluted, horrible air? No, we want to what? Purge it. So we want to purge. P-U-R, I don't know, purge.
Yeah.
Purge it. We want to get all of that out. So if I have refrigerant here and my tank is still closed, everything's still closed, how can I purge it? Loosen the hose here. Right? If it's loose here, the hose isn't tight, it's loose. Remember how when we did charging, we left the hose loose while we did it at the manifold and we purged the air out? I want to leave that hose loose. You guys look at me crazy. The hose, you don't thread it on all the way. You leave it loose. Okay. Okay. You had that lost look, so it scares me. So let me clarify. You put your low loss fitting here, and you put your low loss fitting here. So it's just a regular plain end right there. I leave it loose. I don't tighten it onto the tank all the way. Everything's closed. All valves everywhere are closed. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to open this valve. Is that going to let refrigerant pressure flow through here?
Yep.
Is that not going to want to push out this opening here?
Yep.
It is. It's going to push through here, through my machine, through here, and it's going to push that contaminants out this loose end right here. So once you hear, right, that's the air being pushed out. You want to then tighten that hose so it doesn't leak refrigerant to the air. To purge. We purge the system. I could write notes in here all day long, but you think about it, loose here, and it's open here, it's going to push it through the system. Every recovery machine is a little different. Some have valves, so you loosen it here, you open that, and nothing comes on. Well, turn these valves to where it allow it to flow through. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's what we want to do. We want to have my gauges. The yellow hose goes in. From there, the out is going to go to my recovery tank. So once I purge it, what I want to do next? What do you think? Yep, tighten this. Then what?
Turn the machine on.
Turn the machine on. Okay, now it's sucking refrigerant here and pumping refrigerant here. Then what?
You better make sure your tank's open.
There we go. Let's open this tank so that we can actually let refrigerant go into it. Wouldn't that be great? And that hose isn't going to hold all that refrigerant from the system, is it? So we got to really make sure that we open that tank so we're actually putting refrigerant into this tank. How does that sound? Is that a good idea? Right? Open the tank? Yeah. So what we're going to do is hook everything up, leave it loose. Open this valve, make sure it's pushing through the system. It's going to make a little shh noise, and then you close that valve. You're purged. Then you're going to turn the machine on and very quickly open the tank. And it's going to pull the refrigerant out of the unit and into the tank. Most recovery machines have an automatic shut-off. So once they get down to a low enough pressure, it'll shut off. We want to pull it down to ideally 10 inches HG. HG, it'll be inches HG. We're really looking for 10. The letters HG, actually there's no dots. HG is on the periodic table of elements. It stands for mercury. Inches of mercury. They used to measure anything less than atmospheric pressure by inches of mercury. So we want to pull down to about 10 inches of mercury, 5 to 10 inches of mercury. We want to make sure that we're below atmospheric conditions, that we've pulled all that refrigerant out of that system. Yes?
Is there mercury in the recovery?
Nope.
That's just something that goes off.
Just a measurement.
So water has, remember us talking about water has weight?
Yeah.
10 inches of water in WC.
So this is really a separate so water has weight, and just let me draw it better. Water has weight to it, and the atmospheric pressure has weight as well. Let me give you an example. The quickest way. I'm trying to think of the quickest way to explain it. If you have a cup and you put a straw in this cup, there's liquid in here. What's the liquid level in that straw? The same. Exactly, right? The same. Right? Everything's level. Now what happens is when you put your mouth on that straw, you increase the volume in your mouth. Right? You increase the volume. So everything's compact when you seal around the straw, and you actually increase the volume inside of your mouth. When you increase the volume, what does it do to the pressure? Drops. When you increase the volume, you have a pressure drop. So now, in your mouth, over here, is less pressure than the air around you. So the air around you, the atmospheric pressure around you is greater here, pushing on this. It's greater air pressure. It's the air pressure that being greater is what actually pushes, the liquid up the straw. All right? It's the air pressure that pushes that liquid up the straw. It's not so much you pulling it in, it's the air pressure pushing it in. Same thing with the vacuum cleaner. Right? A vacuum cleaner, you have atmospheric pressure. It's not actually sucking into it. It's really making a pressure difference. It's the atmospheric pressure on the outside that's pushing to that lower pressure. And it's moving so fast, it pulls dirt and stuff in with it. In space, would a vacuum cleaner work? No, because space is already a vacuum. So a lot of people get confused about that. Like, well, how can space be a vacuum? Especially some of the flat earth people I've talked to. Well, how can space be a vacuum? What is there like a big pump out there that's pulling it? No, there's not. There's nothing in there. Vacuum is nothing. In Earth, because it's round, sorry to break it to you, we have gravity and we have all these different gases that have weight. And all of these gases are pushing down and have weight, and they're pushing down here. So we are at 14.7 inches PSI atmospheric all the time. We're under pressure. Right now, we're under pressure. Right? We're under pressure. But we don't know we're under pressure because we've lived our whole life like this. we don't realize that we're under pressure. When you go fishing, you may have been deep sea fishing.
I mean,
You've been deep sea fishing? So when you pull a fish up from the very bottom, what does his eyes do?
Pop out.
They pop out because he's lived his whole life under pressure. He didn't know there's a problem, but you pull him up fast, all that there's no longer that pressure on him. His eyes pop out. The fish is larger out of that water than he is in the water because there's no pressure pushing on him anymore. I can take that balloon back there and I can put that balloon in that vacuum chamber and inflate that balloon without putting any pressure in that balloon. It's because of the atmospheric pressure on it. And if I take the atmospheric pressure away from the outside, the pressure inside is greater. It'll actually inflate. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. So around us all the time is pressure all the time. So water has weight, and what they found in plumbers was they could pull water out of a well. They could pull water with having a pressure drop. What they found, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was 33 feet. They could pull water up 33 feet high. A column of water, 33 feet. I can't remember exactly the number, it's 33 feet. What that really means is that the bottom of that well, there where the water is, the atmospheric pressure, the 14.7 of atmospheric pressure pushing down, you could only make a pressure difference great enough for that 14.7 could only push that water up 33 feet. And it balanced out. The weight of the water and the best possible vacuum you could get, you can only get, I think it was 33 feet high. That was the best you could get out of it. And it was because of the weight of the water. Before then, they always thought that vacuum was this thing. And they thought, well, you can only make so much suction. That's all you can get. Well, then they got to realizing that vacuum isn't a thing. It's just less. There is no such thing as a vacuum, is what I'm trying to say. There's no such thing as a vacuum. There's either more pressure or less pressure. Here, we have 14.7 psi on us all the time. So when I'm making what you guys think of as a vacuum, I'm just simply removing pressure. I'm having a pressure difference. The higher pressure is going to push to the lower pressure. So it's actually pushing up. So the water can only go 33 feet high. So they could actually measure how much of a vacuum you had by 33 feet of water. But it was very difficult carrying around a tube of water 33 feet long. So mercury weighs much, much, much more than air. Mercury is much heavier than air. Mercury is extremely heavy. It's a lot of very loud music. It's a heavy metal. But it's liquid form.
Someone do the.
Yeah, no, it's too late.
Do it quickly.
Yeah, it's too late. It's too late.
Don't
Too
do
late,
it.
Alex. Don't do it. Doesn't want.
Sorry, I failed.
Your app's telling you to stop.
So what they would do is fill this tube with mercury. Mercury is a lot heavier, so this tube only had to be 30 inches high. As I pulled a vacuum on that mercury, as it pulled a vacuum down, we could change the height of that mercury so many inches. So we can pull it down to nothing, which is what we call a vacuum of 30 inches of mercury. Really, it's 29 point something, something, something. But we really need to get 10 inches of mercury. So we actually have a thing of mercury and a tube in it. It's actually where barometers came from, measuring atmospheric pressure. It's just the opposite way. So when it talks about 10 inches of mercury, it goes back to this date. But we don't have to worry about mercury anymore because we have a pressure gauge. It's called a compound gauge. The suction side is a compound gauge because it measures positive pressure and negative pressure. So this compound gauge reads high or low. But anything below 0 psi gauge, we call inches of mercury. And it goes back to the day of yore when they had actual mercury barometers. Still call it inches of mercury.
Just like inches of water column. Even though
Just like inches of water column.
water columns. You know, you still could.
Right? So, moral of the story is, you want to pull it down to 10 inches Hg of mercury. We're not using mercury anymore, but it's like horsepower. We're not measuring how fast our car go by the horses it could use from the 17th or 16th century, right? But it's still, we call it horsepower, right? So, we're going to call it inches of mercury, even though we're not really using mercury anymore.
Because standards.
So that's what we want to do. Because let's go back again, because now we've probably forgotten the main thing, right? So we're going to hook our gauges up. We're going to the yellow hose to the inside. The outside is going to go to the tank. Low loss fittings both go in the machine. I loosen it at the tank. I open the valve. I purge it. Then I close that or screw it on all the way to where it's not leaking out anymore. I turn the machine on to immediately open this tank so that it's pushing the refrigerant into the tank. I want to do this until it gets down to 10 inches of mercury. Then I can close this off and shut everything off. All right? We have a package unit outside. We're going to work on it. Severely overcharged. I've been waiting for this day to come so that we could recover that extra refrigerant out of there so that we can actually charge it and have that unit running. So instead of having two lines with an inside unit and an outside unit, it's going to be one packaged unit. We're inside, outside, all together in one package. That's why I call it a packaged unit. And we're going to have a port, two ports where you can put your gauges on the side. The port on top is going to be for high pressure, usually. The port on bottom is going to be lower for low pressure. We're going to hook our red gauge to the one that's higher, the blue gauge to the one that's lower.
Whoa.
Yeah, and then we're going to recover all the refrigerant out of that system. And what are we going to do? Cover it into what? Recovery tank. Now, this recovery tank needs to stay 410A. We still have a lot of things we're going to talk to about of just this tank and this tank alone. But first, let's get into getting this first step done. All right? Let's go to the lab. Let's make this happen.